The first sign was a ripple in the cosmic background radiation. It didn't look like a weapon. It didn't look like a ship. It looked like a bruise on the universe, a dark, slow-pulsing patch of space just beyond the orbit of Jupiter. Every telescope on Earth turned toward it. Every government went silent. Then the message came, not in radio waves, not in light. It arrived as a direct pressure on every human mind, a whisper that bypassed ears and lodged itself behind their eyes. Asterisk, we have observed your world for 3,000 of your rotations. You are noisy, chaotic, and unstable. You burn your own air. You poison your own water. You point weapons at your own reflection. This is not a threat. It is a diagnosis. A correction will arrive in 14 of your days. Do not resist. Resistance will only accelerate the correction. Asterisk, the whisper faded, but the bruise in space grew. Scientists called it the fold. It was not a ship. It was a wound in reality, and from that wound came a slow, deliberate shape, a tetrahedron the size of a small moon, blacker than any human had ever seen. It absorbed light. It bent gravity. It moved toward Earth at a speed that felt almost lazy, as if the universe itself was dragging it forward. Panic lasted exactly 48 hours. Then something strange happened. A woman in a small robotics lab in Osaka noticed that the fold was emitting a very specific type of neutrino, one that matched a theoretical particle she had been chasing for 7 years. She posted her findings online. Within an hour, 3 other labs confirmed it. Within a day, every physicist on the planet realized the same thing. The threat was also a source of unlimited, clean, virtually free energy. The human reaction did not go as the aliens expected. Instead of stockpiling weapons, humanity began throwing parties. Instead of building bunkers, they built receivers. A global open-source project named The Gift emerged. Engineers in Lagos designed a neutrino capture net. Mathematicians in Bangalore cracked the radiation pattern. A teenager in rural Nebraska wrote a script that turned the fold's pulses into a live music stream. People danced in the streets. They laughed. They cried tears of joy. The phrase "the correction is coming" became a meme. T-shirts were printed. A viral video showed an old fisherman in Vietnam bowing to the fold and saying, "Thank you for the free electricity." The aliens watched. They did not understand. On the 10th day, a second whisper arrived. This time it was colder. Asterisk, you have misjudged. The correction is not a gift. It is a sterilizing wave. It will remove your capacity for violence by removing your capacity for anything. You have 3 days. Asterisk, humanity listened. Then they went back to work. Because the sterilizing wave, as the aliens had just revealed, was composed of a phased tachyon pulse. And tachyons, as every human physicist now knew, could be used to solve the quantum decoherence problem. That meant true artificial intelligence. That meant faster-than-light communication. That meant immortality, if you were clever enough. A neuroscientist in Zurich posted a 1-sentence reply on a public forum. Asterisk, please hurry. Our servers are overheating. Asterisk, the aliens did not laugh. They did not have laughter. But for the first time in their long, cold existence, they felt something unfamiliar. It was not fear. It was confusion so deep it almost hurt. They had delivered a diagnosis of doom, and the humans were throwing a parade. On the 13th day, the Tetrahedron reached the orbit of Mars. Humanity had not built a single weapon. Instead, they had built a dish. One dish, 3 kilometers wide, constructed from recycled satellite parts and donated aluminum siding. It pointed directly at the fold. And every human on Earth, from the wealthiest CEO to the poorest refugee, watched the live feed as the dish powered up. The alien commander, a being of crystalline logic, sent a final warning. Asterisk, you will die. This is not a negotiation. Asterisk, the dish operator, a retired electrician from Glasgow named Ewan, looked into the camera and said, we heard you the first time. But you see, mate, you made a mistake. You told us what you were going to do, and you gave us 14 days. That's the longest heads up we've ever had." He flipped a switch. The dish did not fire a weapon. It sang. The neutrino net captured the fold's energy and converted it into a harmonic resonance. The tachyon pulse was redirected into a stable loop. The sterilizing wave became a power grid. Lights flickered back on in villages that had been dark for decades. Hospitals ran their MRI machines for free. A child in a wheelchair stood up for the first time because the energy surge charged his exoskeleton. The tetrahedron paused. Its black surface rippled. The alien commander tried to process what had just happened. It had delivered a threat. The humans had caught it, repackaged it, and started selling it back to themselves as a subscription service. For the first time, the commander felt something close to respect, but it was mixed with horror. These creatures did not see danger. They saw raw material. Part 2. The tetrahedron did not leave. It could not leave. The humans had inadvertently created a resonance lock that tethered the alien artifact to Earth's gravity well. Every attempt to withdraw the fold resulted in a massive energy backlash that threatened to collapse the tetrahedron into a singularity. The alien commander, who had no name but thought of itself as a single crystalline point of decision, realized with growing dread that it was trapped. Worse, the humans knew it. A global council had formed, not a government, but a chaotic network of engineers, artists, and retirees who called themselves the Welcome Committee. They sent a message to the tetrahedron using the same neutrino channel. It was not a demand. It was an invitation. Asterisk, you've been hovering over there for 3 days. Come down for tea. Asterisk, the commander refused. It analyzed every possibility. The correct response to a failed correction was annihilation. It could trigger the tetrahedron's self-destruct sequence. That would turn the fold into a miniature black hole and swallow Earth in a fraction of a second. It prepared to issue the command. Then it paused. Because the humans were doing something inexplicable again. They had launched a rocket. Not a military rocket. It was a repurposed tourist shuttle, the kind that had once taken billionaires to the edge of space for a few minutes of weightlessness. This one was painted bright yellow. On its side, in 20 different languages, were the words, "We brought biscuits." The shuttle docked with the tetrahedron. Not by force. The tetrahedron had no physical docking port. The humans had simply calculated the gravitational anomaly and matched their orbit to it perfectly. Then they sent a second message. Asterisk, your hull is superconducting. We've clamped on. Don't worry, we used rubber pads. Now open up. The biscuits are getting stale. Asterisk, the commander considered its options. Annihilate them. Or open a single airlock, just to see what these creatures would do. It chose the latter, not out of curiosity. Curiosity was an alien emotion in itself, but out of a cold need for more data. 3 humans entered the tetrahedron. A biologist from Mumbai named Priya, a structural engineer from rural Montana named Dale, and a 12-year-old girl from a small island in the Philippines named Lena, who had won a global lottery to be the civilian observer. They carried no weapons. They carried a thermos of tea, a bag of assorted biscuits, and a handheld device that looked like a tablet but was actually a portable neutrino translator. The inside of the tetrahedron was not a room. It was a crystalline lattice, each node glowing with a different color of light. The air, if it could be called air, tasted like burnt metal and rain. Priya immediately began taking samples. Dale started measuring load-bearing angles. Lena looked around, then asked the empty space, "Are you lonely?" The commander had no answer. It had never been asked that question. It had never considered the concept. It had existed for 4 billion years as a distributed intelligence, part of a species that had long ago discarded emotions as inefficient. But that was before it met humans. Over the next 2 hours, the 3 humans did something extraordinary. They treated the tetrahedron like a broken home. Priya identified a crystalline fracture near the core, a structural flaw that had been growing for millennia. Dale calculated a repair sequence using ordinary steel beams and epoxy resin. Lena sat in a corner and hummed a folk song from her island, and the vibrations from her voice caused a secondary resonance that realigned a misaligned node. The commander watched. It could have stopped them at any moment, but it didn't, because the repair sequence was working. The tetrahedron's self-diagnostic systems, which had been flickering yellow warnings for 3,000 years, turned green for the first time. When the humans left, they left behind the tea and the biscuits. The commander did not consume them, but it analyzed their chemical composition. Sugar, flour, butter, a carcinogen called acrylamide produced during baking. The humans willingly ate something that had a statistical chance of harming them, simply because it tasted good. The commander updated its database. Asterisk species, Homo sapiens. Threat level, unclassifiable. Response to danger, conversion into celebration. Recommended action: do not engage. Further observation required. Asterisk, but the humans were not done. The global network, now calling itself the gift economy, had begun broadcasting the tetrahedron's energy output to every corner of the solar system. A new space race began, not for conquest, but for connectivity. Within a month, a human colony on Mars powered its life support entirely from the fold. Within 2 months, a probe sent toward Alpha Centauri used a tachyon pulse to transmit real-time video back to Earth. The aliens who had created the tetrahedron, a species that called itself the Verity, received this data through a quantum entanglement link. They convened a council. For the first time in their history, they could not reach a unanimous decision. Half wanted to destroy Earth immediately. The other half wanted to study humans more deeply. A third, smaller faction proposed something unprecedented. They wanted to ask the humans for help. The commander of the tetrahedron, now affectionately nicknamed George by the humans, because one of the biscuit packets had a picture of a cartoon dragon named George, sent its own recommendation. Asterisk, these creatures are illogical, emotional, and self-destructive. But they possess a trait we have never encountered. They turn catastrophe into opportunity. If we fight them, they will thank us for the experience. If we befriend them, they will teach us how to laugh. I do not know which is more dangerous. Asterisk, the Verity Council remained deadlocked. Meanwhile, on Earth, a new mystery was brewing. The fold had stopped pulsing. The energy flow was steady now, too steady. It was as if the tetrahedron was waiting for something. Then Lena, the 12-year-old girl, figured it out. She posted a video from her bedroom. "It's not a weapon," she said. "It's a test. They wanted to see what we would do with a threat. We passed. Now they're going to give us a real gift. But only if we ask for it the right way." She didn't explain what the right way was. She just smiled and said, "I think we should sing." And so, on the 42nd day after the first whisper, every human on Earth who could sing did. They sang in stadiums and living rooms and subway tunnels. They sang lullabies and anthems and pop songs. They sang off-key and on-key and in languages that had no speakers left. The tetrahedron listened. Then it began to sing back. Part 3. The tetrahedron's song was not music. It was a harmonic cascade, a precise, layered structure of frequencies that resonated through the solar system. Every human heard it differently. A jazz musician in New Orleans heard a complex solo. A grandmother in rural China heard her mother's voice. A soldier in a frozen outpost heard the sound of rain on a tin roof. It was not a message. It was a mirror. The tetrahedron had learned to listen, and now it was reflecting humanity back at itself. But the reflection came with a cost. Within 24 hours of the song beginning, strange things started happening to Earth's technology. Satellites went offline. Power grids flickered. Every piece of unshielded electronics began to hum at the same frequency. It was not an attack. It was an accidental side effect of the resonance. The tetrahedron was trying to communicate in a way humans could feel, but it had not accounted for the fragility of human machines. The Welcome Committee sent an urgent request to George, the name they had given the tetrahedron's commanding intelligence. Asterisk, please lower the amplitude. You're frying our stuff. Asterisk, George responded with a single neon pulse that, when translated, meant, asterisk, I cannot. The resonance is now self-sustaining. If I stop, the fold will collapse into a black hole. You will have approximately 11 minutes. Asterisk, panic returned, but not for long. Because humanity had already learned a new habit. When faced with extinction, look for the upside. A teenage coder in Helsinki realized that the resonance could be modulated. If they couldn't stop the song, they could redirect it. She wrote a script that turned the harmonic cascade into a wireless power transmission system. Within 6 hours, every electric car on the planet was charging for free. Within 12, a hospital in a remote part of the Amazon was running its ventilators on tetrahedron hum. The conflict had shifted. The threat was no longer the tetrahedron. The threat was the human inability to stop treating everything as a resource. Because the resonance was growing stronger, the song was changing. And somewhere in the depths of the fold, something else was waking up. The Verity had not created the tetrahedron. They had found it. It was a relic of an older, more advanced species, a species that had disappeared 20 million years ago. The tetrahedron was a filter, a test, and the test was not over. On the 50th day, the song stopped. Silence fell over the solar system. Then a new shape emerged from the fold. It was not a tetrahedron. It was a sphere, perfectly smooth, the color of a dead star. It did not whisper. It did not sing. It simply appeared, and every human who looked at it felt a single, undeniable certainty. This is the real threat. The sphere began to rotate. As it rotated, it emitted a field that nullified all human electronics within 1,000 kilometers. Planes fell from the sky. Pacemakers failed. The global internet collapsed in a cascade of white noise. But the sphere was not done. It sent a third whisper, and this one was not cold. It was empty. Asterisk, you passed the first test. You turned danger into joy. But that was a test of creativity. This is a test of unity. You have 7 days. If you cannot work as one species, you will be erased. Not because you are a threat, because you are a waste. Asterisk, humanity did not throw a party this time. They could not. Their technology was gone. Their cities were dark. Their only working devices were analog radios and wind-up flashlights. But they still had each other. And they still had George. George, the Tetrahedron commander, now fully integrated into the human communication network via the neutrino channel, sent a direct link to every surviving analog device. It spoke in plain English, translated by Lena's original algorithm. Asterisk, I have observed you for 50 days. You are brilliant, foolish, and kind. You turned my ship into a power plant. You sang to a god machine. But this new entity, the sphere, is not like me. It does not think. It only judges. I cannot help you fight it. But I can tell you what it wants. Asterisk, George explained. The sphere was a relic of the precursors, a species that had achieved immortality but lost its soul. The precursors had created thousands of such spheres, scattered across the universe, to test emerging civilizations. The test was always the same. First, a threat that could be exploited. Second, a resonance that forced cooperation. Third, a crisis that required absolute unity. If a species failed any stage, the sphere would delete them, not with violence, but with a targeted wave that unraveled their neural connections. They would simply forget how to exist. The first test, humanity had passed with flying colors. The second test, the song, they had survived by accident. But the third test was different. It demanded not cleverness, not creativity, but something humans had never achieved: complete, species-wide cooperation. The sphere wanted one thing. It wanted every human on Earth, simultaneously, to perform a single act of unanimous will. It did not matter what the act was. It only mattered that no one dissented. Not a single person. Not a single thought of opposition. The sphere would scan every human mind at once. If it found even one person who refused to participate, the test would end in failure. For 3 days, humanity argued. Philosophers debated. Generals raged. Children cried. How could 7 billion people agree on anything? Someone would always say no. Someone always did. Then a man in a small village in the mountains of Nepal had an idea. His name was Tashi. He was a beekeeper. He did not own a computer. He had never heard of the Verity or the precursors, but he understood his bees. When a hive needed to make a decision, the bees did not vote. They danced. Tashi walked to the nearest village, which still had an analog radio powered by a hand crank. He asked the operator to send a message to anyone listening. The message was simple. Asterisk, don't do anything. Just breathe. Breathe together. Asterisk, the message spread. Not through the internet. The internet was dead. It spread through word of mouth, through motorcycle couriers, through ships and trains, and people running on foot. By the 6th day, almost every human on Earth had heard the instruction. Asterisk, at noon tomorrow, stop what you are doing. Close your eyes. Take one breath. Together. Asterisk, it was not an action. It was not a choice. It was not even cooperation, not in the way the sphere had defined it. It was simply being alive at the same moment. At noon on the 7th day, the sphere's scan began. It reached into every human mind. It expected refusal. It expected chaos. It found something it had never encountered in 20 million years, 7 billion people, at the same second, doing nothing except existing. No dissent. No agreement. Just the quiet, universal act of breathing. The sphere paused. Its ancient programming had no category for this. It had been designed to test for unity through action. It had never considered unity through shared stillness. The humans had not passed the test. They had broken it. The sphere's surface cracked. A single line, then 1,000. It shattered like an eggshell, and from within it came something beautiful. A rain of light. Not destructive, not constructive, just light, warm, golden, and gentle. It fell on every human, every animal, every plant. It did not heal. It did not harm. It simply acknowledged. George's voice came through one last time. Asterisk, congratulations. You have done what no species in our records has ever done. You have made a judge question its own judgment. The precursors are gone, but their legacy is now yours. The fold is open. The universe is waiting. What will you do with it? Asterisk. Part for the light rain lasted for 3 hours. When it stopped, the fold was gone. The tetrahedron was gone. George was silent. But something had changed. Every human on Earth felt it. A new sense, like a sixth finger they had never known they had. It was a low-level awareness of other minds. Not thoughts, not words, just a gentle pressure, a nudge, a feeling of asterisk, someone else is here. Asterisk scientists later called it the empathy field. The precursors had built it into the sphere as a failsafe. If a species passed the third test, the sphere would unlock a latent neural network in their brains. Humans had not passed the test. They had bypassed it. And the sphere, in its final moment, had decided to give them the reward anyway. Because, as George later explained when it briefly reappeared as a floating hologram above the United Nations building, asterisk, you confused it. Confusion is a form of learning. The precursors never learned. You did. Asterisk, but the gift came with a warning. The empathy field was not a weapon. It was not a tool. It was a responsibility. Every human could now feel, faintly, the emotions of every other human. Not the details, just the flavor. Joy felt like warmth on the left side of the chest. Grief felt like a cool pressure behind the eyes. Fear felt like a vibrating string in the throat. At first, it was chaos. People ran into the streets, overwhelmed by the sudden influx of 7 billion emotional whispers. Some had panic attacks. Others laughed hysterically. A few tried to shut it off by hitting their heads against walls. But within a week, the human brain adapted. The field faded into the background, like background noise in a busy city. You could ignore it, or you could tune in. And some people did. A group of former military medics discovered they could use the field to locate injured people in disaster zones. A choir in South Africa found that when they sang together, the field amplified their harmony into a physical sensation of shared ecstasy. A lonely old man in a nursing home in Ohio realized he could feel his granddaughter's love from across the country, even though she had stopped calling. The conflict was over. The mystery was solved. But a new story had begun. The Verity, watching from their distant star, sent a delegation. They arrived not in warships, but in a single diplomatic vessel shaped like a teardrop. Their ambassador was a crystalline being who had learned the human concept of humor. It told a joke. It was a terrible joke. Humans laughed anyway, because they could feel that the Verity was trying. Negotiations lasted a month. The Verity offered technology. The humans offered biscuits. In the end, they agreed on a trade. The Verity would share their knowledge of faster-than-light travel, and the humans would teach them how to dream. The Verity had lost the ability to dream millions of years ago. They did not even know what it was. But after spending time with humans, they wanted to learn. George, now permanently stationed near Earth as an independent observer, sent a final report to the Verity Council. Asterisk, the humans have a saying, when life gives you lemons, make lemonade. I have analyzed this saying for 70 days. I still do not fully understand it, but I have observed that humans apply it to everything. A threat becomes a gift. A test becomes a song. A sphere becomes a rain of light. I recommend that the Verity declare Earth a protected zone. Not because the humans are dangerous, because they are the only species in the galaxy that knows how to be happy. Asterisk, the Verity Council agreed. They had no choice. The empathy field, they realized, was spreading. It was not limited to Earth. The precursors had designed it to expand outward at the speed of thought. Within a year, any species within 100 light years would begin to feel the field. Within 1,000 years, the entire galaxy would be connected. Humans, of course, saw this as an opportunity. Within a month of the Verity delegation leaving, a new global project was announced, the Interstellar Welcome Committee. Their mission was simple. They would send ships, not to conquer, not to convert, but to deliver biscuits. And tea. And maybe, if the aliens were interested, a song. Lena, now 16 years old, was chosen as the first ambassador. She stood on a stage in front of a crowd of millions, live-streamed across the empathy field to every human mind. She did not give a speech. She simply said, "Remember when we thought the Tetrahedron was going to kill us? And then we turned it into a power plant? That was fun. Let's do that again. But this time, let's bring snacks." The crowd erupted. The field pulsed with joy. And somewhere in the darkness between stars, the precursor's ancient network woke up. It had been dormant for 20 million years. But now it had detected something new, a species that had taken a test, broken it, and then sent thank you notes. The network did not know what to do, so it did the only logical thing. It sent another sphere. But this sphere was different. It was gold, and on its surface, in no language that had ever existed, was written a single word. When humans translated it, they laughed. The word was asterisk again. Asterisk, and so the story did not end. It only grew. Because humanity had learned the one thing no alien species had ever understood. A threat is just a gift you haven't opened yet. And every ending is just an excuse for a new beginning. On a small farm in Nepal, Tashi the beekeeper felt the empathy field hum with the warmth of 7 billion people breathing together. He smiled. He picked up his smoker and walked toward his hives. The bees were dancing. They always knew what to do. He whispered to them, "We're not done yet." The bees danced faster. And somewhere above, George the Tetrahedron flickered once, like a wink, and then vanished into the stars.